What's up, guys? So at this point, we've covered the 12 original puzzles, and hopefully you've been able to see that the method I've been using with the number in there and how the points on the map match up with points in the picture. And also, I hope you guys have seen how some of the clues are connected. There's a lot of connecting the dots that you have to do in this puzzles in this game right here, the secret. So now that that stuff is done, we're going to be moving on to my favorite part. We're going to be talking about some new stuff. I know a lot of people don't believe that there are secret puzzles, additional puzzles, more gems, but you guys would be wrong there, and I'm going to show you guys that there's a lot more to this now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start doing the secret puzzles. The first puzzle is going to be in Los Angeles. Number 13 is in Los Angeles, and number 14 is once again in New York City. So we're going to be doing those two puzzles first. For any of you guys that have been working on this for over a year, I know some of you guys are really dedicated. I spent a lot of time on this stuff too. This stuff is for you guys. I know that sometimes you just need a little help to see what's in there, so hopefully I could show this to you guys. It's going to be the most fun part. We're going to really find out the big picture here. A lot of people are focused on finding the gems, and they're missing out on the big picture. You really got to do your homework, and hopefully we're going to find some interesting stuff here. So we're going to start with number 13 first, Los Angeles. Let's see what we can find. Let's do it.
So we're going to be using the website 12treasures.com because they've uploaded the entire book along with the pictures. If the people from 12treasures.com are watching, thank you guys very much. It was a big help to have this book online. So what we're going to do first is we're going to turn to page 48, and this is how we're going to start doing our 13th puzzle. We're going to be matching up each one of these fair people with a point on the map. There's a total of 25 fair people here in this picture. The hardest one to see is right here, which is Team Spirit. Unfortunately, the picture quality is not too good, but we're going to work with it. I think we have enough information that we can see everything. Now, before I start, though, I want to redirect you guys to page 47. And here you can see the secret page 47. What I want you guys to do is look right here at this picture. I know a lot of people think that there's only 12 puzzles in this book, but if there were only 12 puzzles, there'd be only 12 gems. And if you look at this picture right here, we have a cask which is open, and you can see to the side of it is much more than 12 gems. And if you look inside the cask, you guys are going to see a cask full of gems. Some of these gems are a lot bigger inside than they are outside. So how do you know there's more than 12 puzzles? Well, there's more than 12 gems. And maybe there's a grand prize to this too. So maybe the grand prize winner would get more, but who knows? But I just wanted to show you guys that this is real. So in this, we're going to be picking out in order the characters that show up first in the book. The first one is going to be the maitre demon. So if you go to the field guide to the fair people, these guys have it laid out so that you can click on each individual one. And when we click on the first one, the maitre demon, I'm going to be using this page right here because this is the actual page from the book. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you briefly what this first line means. I'm going to tell you what the second line means. And I'm just going to go over a few things in the puzzle or in the page itself. I'm not going to go over everything. Unfortunately, there are 19 clues, and we don't have a lot of time to go over everything. We're going to be going through this quickly. I'm going to point out the things that are most important, and if you guys want to find any more information, you guys are going to have to do the reading yourself. All I can really tell you about these pages right here about the fair people, they have 4 different sections. They have a range, they have the habits, they have history, and they have spotters tips. The answer or what's going to help you is going to be in different parts of this range, habits, history, and spotter tips. And for some of the clues which are a little more difficult, if you actually read through in the book, you can find hints as for what some of these things are. So if you're having trouble, read the book and you might be able to find something that you're looking for. It might not tell you exactly the name, but it might tell you what to look for, whether it be a place, whether it be a specific location or a city or something of that sense. You're going to find it in the book. Everything is listed. So our first clue is maitre demon. First, what is a maitre d'? It's called a maitre d' hotel, and it's basically the head waiter, host, water captain, or maitre d' that manages the front part of the house of a formal restaurant. So when it says tabou de hote, it's referring to the hotel or whatever it is. But the saying underneath tabou de hote, this actually doesn't mean quite that. The literal translation here is table for two. So you guys are gonna have to be a little crafty when it comes to figuring out some of these. Some of these are in another language like Latin or other languages, and some of them just have a meaning or saying that you're gonna have to figure out. A couple of things that I wanted to point out real fast was if you look up what a demon is, you can see the disambiguation and you can see daemon or daemon, whatever you want to call it. But a demon is something that's very old. This comes from early Judaism, Near Eastern religions, Abrahamic religions, and this stuff originated from a later form of Zoroastrianism and was transferred to Judaism during the Persian era. So the term demon or daemon or whatever you want to call it is very old. Some of the things I can point out are right here in the text: Mordor's Mount Doom. Shout out to Lord of the Rings, great movie. Some of the things they talk about here are Lafayette, again, who we've seen previously in New Orleans, Lafayette Square. We also talk about Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, who was our third president, whose residence was in Monticello. Then it talks about Michelin and McDonald's and some other things. Now, what we have to do is we have to distinguish and decipher what is going to be our clue. Here it sounds like we're looking for a restaurant, somebody who's going to be taking our order and helping us, and table for two. That kind of means, well, we're going to go sit down and eat. And using our map, if we typed in Jefferson, you can see that there's a Jefferson Boulevard here close to Culver City. This area used to be called Jefferson. I know it's called something else now, but there's also a Jefferson Park not far away. So we are looking for something that has to do with Jefferson and Lafayette. And right here on Jefferson, close by, there's a Lafayette Street. And further up, we could see that there's a restaurant, Meat in Paris French Bistro. This is going to be where we want to set our first point. This is what we are looking for right here. Something that has to do with French maitre d', table to eat at, and has to do with Paris. So this is going to be our first clue right here. And we'll be moving on to the next now. Our next clue is going to be sweat sylphs. And right here it says athleterum supportate, which means support the athletes. What is a sylph? First, let's check it out. A sylph is an air spirit stemming from the 16th century works of a man named Paracelsus. This guy was a Swiss physician, an alchemist, a lay theologian, and philosopher of the German Renaissance. So he's done a little bit of things like alchemy, and he was very influential later in his life, particularly on the Rosicrucians, which is a society called the Rose Cross or the Rosy Cross. So that's a little bit about what a sylph is. It's named for a guy that created that term. Now, when we're looking through the actual list or the actual text, what we are going to see is that there's not many names of reference here. They do talk about athletic clubs, but the big clue here is going to be that they're talking about the Olympic flame. And if you know anything about Los Angeles, you know that the Los Angeles has hosted the Olympics 3 times, or 2 times so far, and once more soon. Once in 1932, once in 1984, and we will be hosting the Olympics again in 2028. And if you know anything about the Olympics in LA, you would know that this happens right here at the LA Memorial Coliseum. This is right next to the campus of USC, and they actually have the Olympic torch right here. So once again in 2028, this Olympic torch will be lit. 2028 will be another Olympics for Los Angeles. It's going to be a good time, but this is going to be what we want to bookmark. This is our answer to our second clue. So we're going to bookmark it and move to the next Next clue is going to be Preps Ghoul, and the saying underneath it, Stupidissimus Scholarum. This means the most stupid of schools. So in our clue right here, our text, it talks about private school reunions, society weddings, ski resorts, regattas, hunt club balls, squash, racquetballs, and bankruptcy courts. They also talk about being an alumni of expensive boarding schools. So we're getting an idea of uh, private schools sounds like more of a wealthy thing that not everybody gets to do. And there's a lot of information here that's kind of hard to decipher. If you want to look at anything, you could talk about Tom Brownie's Ghoul Days, really school days, and you can read about him. But none of this really helps us. What we're looking for is something that's going to help us solve this clue. Are we looking for a school? The school for the rich is what it sounds like. A couple of other things. It talks about the Mayflower, and we're going to see the Mayflower several times throughout this text. But the one thing that's going to help us is at the bottom, the spotter's tips. It says prep schools loitering about whatever balding blonde people of either sex look and laugh like they're horses. So horses is going to be our clue right here. If you think about horses and sports and kind of like wealthy people games, you're going to come up with one game in particular, and that's polo. And polo is a ball game that is played on horseback as a traditional field sport. It's one of the oldest known team sports, and it's been around for a long time and originated back in ancient Iran, initially played by Persian nobilities who were training cavalry. So polo will be what helps us. And it just so happens that there is a place called the Polo Lounge, and this is going to be right in the heart of Beverly Hills at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So this sounds like what we're looking for. If you're in Beverly Hills, you have to be very wealthy, and the Polo Lounge is something that has to do with horses. Perhaps the wealthy people teach their kids about money, and they do inherit a lot of money, their children, and perhaps they don't learn the value of earning a dollar, which is something you always hear as a kid. You got to learn the value of a dollar. So, unfortunately, if you got to work for it, you know the value. If you don't have to work for it, you don't know. So, the most stupid of schools, maybe just giving money away. But here we are looking at the Polo Lounge. This will be our next solution. So the next fair person we're going to be looking at is the Pilgrim. We have all heard of Pilgrims. They came over on the Mayflower to Plymouth, and Pilgrims and Indians. They had Thanksgiving, turkey, and all that stuff, which they kind of talk about in here. If there's anybody of note to look at, maybe you want to look up Catherine Briggs, who had an encyclopedia of fairies. But there's not too much information here except for talking about pilgrims and some of the things that they did. The translation under here, prudence pudenda, means too prudent to be ashamed. So these guys are definitely into what they're doing, and if they're prudes, they're more than happy with it, and they'll probably talk down on anybody who isn't. Obviously, we have some clues here, the Mayflower, Plymouth, but one thing I wanted to touch on was down at the bottom, it talks about something called the Pilgrim's Progress. Now, The Pilgrim's Progress is actually a book that was written back in 1678 by a guy named John Bunyan, and this book was a Christian allegory. This book talks about a person's journey to get closer to God, to find his way to God. And this book inspired a lot of people, a lot of authors who you've probably heard of, namely C.S. Lewis, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Charles Dickens, Louisa May Alcott, Mark Twain, who we've talked about before, and John Steinbeck. So this is a book that inspired a lot of people, and this talks about God. So it sounds like we're looking for religion here, or something that has to do with religion. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to find out where that is, and something that has to do with religion, that's a location or a building, is usually a church. So if we're looking, the only things we really have to track down are Mayflower and Plymouth. And it just so happens that if we look for a street called Plymouth, right in the heart of Koreatown, we're going to find that there is a Plymouth, and right on Wilshire and Plymouth, there's a church called the Wilshire United Methodist Church. Because this church is in Koreatown, this church has been converted to a Korean based church, but when it opened, it wasn't called this. It was called the Emmanuel Presbyterian Church of Los Angeles, and this opened back in 1929 and has a lot of history. Uh, if you want to read more about it, feel free. It was made in a French Gothic revival style, and it has some pretty nice stained glass windows there. So if you're ever in the area, you can check it out. There's some interesting things around there as well. But as far as we need to know, this looks like what we're looking for, a church. So we're going to bookmark it and we're going to move on. Next fair person we're going to be looking for is the Screaming Mimi, and the translation under it for infans infernus inflictus means child inflicted with hell. So something that has to do with children here. In the picture, you can see that there's a baby in some kind of a stroller. Kind of looks like it's been abandoned, hopefully not. But we're looking for something that has to do with children. A couple of names that we should take a look at. We have Daniel Boone and Lewis and Clark, who were pioneers and explored the West. Basically, it says to get away from the house and the babies, they wanted to go explore West. So kind of funny, but the thing that we're looking for is something that has to do with children. And the thing that's going to help us right here is the bottom spotter's tip right here. It says, in order to spot, you're looking for something that's sort of ammonia-like aroma, alone or accompanied by a dark, heavy, sulfurous scent, not unlike that of English cooking. Well, if I said that the first part of ammonia-like aroma was something like Sinai, if you guys ever been to LA, there's only one Sinai that would stand out, and that's Cedar Sinai. And for English cooking, maybe they used English cedars, but Cedar Sinai is actually a hospital. And here you could see Cedar Sinai Medical Center. Obviously, they deliver children there. So this sounds like the answer to the clue right here. So what we're going to do is bookmark it and move on. So the next fair person we're going to be looking at is the garden goyle. And underneath it says horticultus. Horticultus roughly translates to horticulture. And what is horticulture? It's the art or practice of garden cultivation and management. So we're looking for something that has to do with gardens and management. And really quickly, garden goyle is a rough translation for gargoyle, and you can see that these are Gothic architecture creatures that convey water from a roof and thereby preventing it from running down masonry walls and eroding the mortar. So you're going to see this. A very famous example is the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France. So they have a lot of gargoyles on them, or not sure if they do anymore since the church reopened, but they used to. A city that it matched up to pretty well. It's called Southgate, and it's in Los Angeles County. A little bit about Southgate. Back during the development, by 1880, cattle raising had been replaced by agriculture as the most important local industries. During the years between 1910 and 1940, most of the agriculture land was replaced by homes and factories. But for some time, agriculture was the big business here in the Southgate area. And if we were to zoom in a little bit on the boundary area of Southgate, you'll see that there's a lot of state names in the streets, one being Oklahoma, which we've seen right here. And if we look on the other side, we have a street called Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find Miami per se, but we do have a street called Seminole. And the Seminoles were from Florida. We also have a couple of other Indian tribe names, the Cherokee and the Tenaya. So this is most likely going to be our point. Also, if you want to think about it, from Florida to Oklahoma, or that was kind of where a lot of the Indians got pushed out to during the Trail of Tears when they were relocated. But so far, Southgate is going to be our next point on the map, and we're going to move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the Saucier's Apprentice, and underneath it says Cuisinart Gratia Artiste. This means kitchen food art. And if you guys have ever seen MGM movies with the lion roaring, they had something similar. Ars gratia artis, which translate to art for the sake of art. Well, this is food art right here. A couple of the people you could look and research a little bit, Julia Childs and King Alfred, who was a king in ancient England. But Julia Childs, who is Julia Childs? And here we have a picture of Julia Childs when she was younger, but she was basically a famous chef who was on TV. She graduated from Cordon Bleu cooking school in Paris, and she later came back, and there was actually a Cordon Bleu or a cooking school founded in Pasadena. But the Cordon Bleu, I believe it opened in 1895, but you can trace the art of cooking in France further back than that. So if you want to look up Cordon Bleu, go for it. But if we took a look at what Julia Childs looked like later in life, she actually wore glasses, and she's very similar to this picture right here of the woman above the chef or below the chef. So Julia Childs is probably someone that we can look for. And as I said, there was a restaurant, the Cordon Bleu, which was in Pasadena. And if we were just to use Google to look up Cordon Bleu in LA, we could see that it had a campus in Pasadena, but it closed in 2017. So, again, this is an example of a place no longer being in existence, but using Google Maps, we can still find where it was. And here you can see Le Cordon Bleu in Pasadena. This is going to be the point that we want to bookmark. Even though it's not there anymore, we're still going to use the point. So, this is the solution here. Now we're going to move on. The next fair person we're going to be looking at is the Handy Manticore, and the slogan underneath, Ars Amputat Artis, means art amputating the frame. So, movie theaters and all that stuff is in a frame. If you're thinking about art without the frame, you're probably going to be thinking more along the lines of a theater where there is no frame, everything is a live action performance, and you could see everything in 360. Just real quickly, a manticore. What is a manticore? It's something from old Persian legend. This thing was very similar to a sphinx. It had the face of a human, the body of a lion, and the tail of a scorpion. And sometimes it had venomous spines like a porcupine, and it may have had the wings of a dragon. So this comes from Persia and ancient Greek. They had things similar like this. Now, there is no real description of what we can use to find this. I think the easiest thing was to find a theater, but you had to find something that had a lot of certain style in it. And what we're looking at right here is in this section right here when it talks about Humpty Dumpty, Tutti Frutti, Fuzzy Wuzzy, Ricky Rooey, Harem Scarum, and Okie Dokie. That's kind of a quick saying for certain uh, races, I guess you could say, certain countries. So if we could find something like that, that would be great. And eventually I found a very famous theater located right on Hollywood Boulevard, and it's the El Capitan Theater. El Cap is located right next to where they filmed Jimmy Kimmel Live. It's also right across the street from the Grauman's or Mann's Chinese Theater, TCL Theater, and right across the street from Dolby Theater, which is where the Oscars are filmed. And what makes this theater similar to what we're looking for is if you look at the features, it talks a lot about different things, mainly California sugaresque style of Spanish colonial. It also has an interior of lavish East Indian in the main auditorium, English Tudor in the wood panel lower lobby, and Italian Baroque on the facade. So we're getting a look at a lot of different styles that were used inside this building, similar to what the description in this is saying. So what we're going to do is we're going to bookmark the El Capitan Theater and move to the next clue. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is devil dogs. And underneath it says regurgitatis projectilis, which means regurgitating projectile, something that you throw up. Here you can look at this little mole or um, gopher, whatever you want to call it, but he's got a fork. So it sounds like we're looking for something that you can eat. A couple of names that stand out. You got Luke Skywalker from Star Wars by George Lucas. You got the Sugar Plum Fairy, which is from the play The Nutcracker, and it also talks about George Washington and his bad teeth. So George Washington, a name we've heard before and we'll hear again. But what we're looking for is something that you can eat, a dog that they serve somewhere in snack bars, bodegas, truck stops, movie theaters, corner candy stores, fast food franchises. And that's what you want to hear, fast food franchises. There's only one famous hot dog place in LA. And if you've ever been there, you know it's Pink's Hot Dogs. Pink's Hot Dogs is one of the most famous hot dog places in LA. If you've ever been there, it's a small place, not a lot of parking, but it's always packed. All the movie stars and all the celebrities, they go here, they got their pictures on the wall. They got dozens and dozens of different kinds of hot dogs. So if we're looking for something we could eat, a hot dog, this is most likely going to be it. The most famous spot, Pink's Hot Dogs. So we're going to bookmark Pink's and we're going to move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is team spirits. And underneath it, it talks about Rosa Petrus, aka Canis Calidus. And that basically means Rose Stone, aka hot dog. We already talked about hot dogs in the last clue, Pink's hot dogs, but this one might be a little different. This is talking about the major leagues, team sports. It talks about baseball traveling at 95 miles per hour, 95 miles per hour. Um, and we're looking for certain things. They talk about Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb, very famous baseball player way back in the day. And they talk about a couple of other guys as well. But the picture, unfortunately, we can't open it. But if you look at the picture, you're going to see in the background, they're going to be three players for the New York Giants, the baseball team. One of those guys being the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, one of the greatest baseball players ever. And then the guy in front, he is wearing a San Francisco Giants jersey. So when I mentioned it before, the New York Giants moving to San Francisco, this is the reason why. If we're looking for a baseball team in LA, I mean, obviously, you know, there's only one, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers, formerly the Brooklyn Dodgers. But they are the world champion Dodgers as of 2024. So this is going to be our next spot, and we're going to bookmark this and we're going to move on. The next fair person we're going to be taking a look at is the Boogeyman. And underneath it says Felis Frigida. Basically, that translates to cool cat. And unfortunately, the picture quality is horrible, very typical. We know this. But you could see that it looks like a frog or something, and he's playing a saxophone. So we're looking for something that has to do with music. A lot of the talk in here is pretty funny. It's like a lot of jive that he's putting in, talking about African roots, lion pride, savannah jungle, mountainside, blood, pulse, drum beat, electric bird, music, ghost feeling, word. So we're looking for something that has to do with music here. And we have to remember the time frame we're in. We're looking somewhere back in the early 1980s. And if you guys remember, there was one famous show that always had that good music, that funk, that jive, whatever you want to call it, but really good soul music, and that was Soul Train. And Soul Train started back in 1971 and it lasted all the way to 2006. 35 years of history. Soul Train was actually filmed here in Los Angeles. You could see here that originally it started in Chicago, but eventually it moved to Hollywood. And around the time that we're looking at, 1982, this was filmed over at A&M Soundstage. And A&M Soundstage was also known as the Charlie Chaplin Soundstage. Where is that place now? Well, A&M Studios was bought out by the Jim Henson Company. So Kermit the Frog, the Muppet Babies, that's who took it over. Here you got a picture, and it's got Kermit the Frog on top of the building. But originally, this property was owned and developed into a movie studio by the great famous Charlie Chaplin. If you guys have ever seen some of his old movies, The Potato Dance in Gold Rush is a classic, and probably one of the best speeches ever given on film is at the end of the movie The Great Dictator. I would suggest checking that out. But Soul Train was filmed here on the Jim Henson Company lot at the time of this book was written. So what we're going to do is find this on our map and we're going to bookmark it. This is our next spot. Now we're going to move on. Next fair creature clue that we're going to be looking at is the pre-revolutionary warlock. And the phrase underneath it, nostalgia Americana, sounds just like it is, American nostalgia. We're looking for something old that brings back memories here. So, knowing that we're looking for some old stuff, what could that be? Looking through the description, it talks about a lot of nostalgic things, a lot of clubs. One thing that stood out to me was this one right here, the Daughters of the American Revolution. I actually have distant relatives that were part of the American Revolution, so I would qualify for the Sons of the American Revolution. Good organization. And the only people that they really talk about here, we have Ethan Allen right here. We also have reference to the Bowie knife, and the Bowie knife was actually made by Jim Bowie. If you know anything about Jim Bowie, you know that he was one of the guys that fought in the Alamo alongside Davy Crockett. Unfortunately, they all lost their lives, but they fought to the bitter end. A couple of other names that stick out: LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who took over right after Kennedy was assassinated. So we got a couple of people of reference here. But we're looking for something that would bring us back. And the big clue here is right here where it says Lafayette. It took a little bit of time, but what I found was an area called Lafayette Square. And you can see Lafayette Square is named just the same as in this little area. And what Lafayette Square is was a neighborhood founded in 1913 by real estate developer George Lafayette Crenshaw and named after the French Marquis de Lafayette, who fought alongside the colonists in the American Revolution, who we've talked about previously. And if we pull up a little bit of information about the residents, the LA Times writes that most of the properties have period details like Juliet balconies, mahogany staircases and libraries, sitting rooms, and whatnot. So these homes are built in a certain style right here. And here you can see right here it has the Mediterranean revival style in Lafayette Square. And you can see from right here, Lafayette Square spelled exactly the same here. So what we're going to do is we're going to bookmark Lafayette Square and we're going to move to the next clue. Fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the Philharmonic Orc, and underneath it it says cacophonious or cacophonous gloriosus, which basically means glorious symphony. There's not too many things that we can point to here. If you want to do a little bit of research, you can look at the Barbary Coast, kind of interesting. Opry houses, and they do make reference of the Sugar Plum Fairy once more. Right here at the bottom, it says Sugar Plum Fairy, so we've seen that previously as well in the Devil Dogs. And it also mentions the Phantom of the Opera, so a couple of famous plays. Um, we are looking for the Philharmonic Orc, and if you're from LA, you know that we actually have the Philharmonic Orchestra. And if you wanted to pull it up on the map, you could see the Los Angeles Philharmonic Association. This is Walt Disney Hall, one of the most interesting outward exteriors you're going to see in design. It looks like folded music notes. Really beautiful building. This may have not have been the original building where the Philharmonic Orchestra performed, but there were a lot of places close by, the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and the Amundsen Theater, where they probably performed previously. But this is what we're going to be looking for, the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra Association. So this is our next clue. We're going to bookmark this and we're going to move on. Next fair person clue we're going to be looking at are the culture vultures, and underneath it says Patronia Matrimonia Alimonia, and that basically means patronage marries alimony. So obviously, if you're an artist early on, you need patrons to support you or buy your work. A lot of older artists worked on commissions, anywhere from Da Vinci to some of the more modern ones, Picasso and others. They worked, Van Gogh. They worked on commissions, so they had patrons. Even the great Michelangelo, his patron was one of the popes, and when he painted the Sistine Chapel, he was getting paid for it. So we're looking for something that has to do with the arts, and the arts could be art, it could be music, it could be theater. That's something that we're looking for. Here they talk about something of the performances of the Greek singer Orpheus. And real briefly, Orpheus was an ancient Greek who was a legendary musician and prophet. He was also a renowned poet. He traveled with Jason and the Argonauts in search of the Golden Fleece, and he did a lot of things. And something that happened to Orpheus was one early morning he went down to the oracle of Dionysus at Mount Pangaeon to salute his god at dawn, but was ripped to shreds by Thracian Maenads for not honoring his previous patron Dionysus. So he got ripped to shreds. Pretty terrible ending. But of course, after some search, what we're going to be looking at right here is the historic Broadway Theater District. And if you want to read a little bit about the Broadway Theater District, there are 12 movie palaces out here with a lot of different performances. You can have uh, music, you could have theater, you can have a lot of other things. But also close to the historic theater district, you have art walks and other art studios out here. So there's a lot of different culture out here if you're looking for the arts. Here we have the Orpheum Theater, named after Orpheus. So this is what we're going to be looking for, the Broadway district. So what we're going to do is we're going to bookmark that and we're going to move on. Fair person we're going to be looking at is teen angels and juvenilis delinques. That translates to juvenile delinquents. It talks about how the age range is between 12 and 21, reciprocal numbers. And it also has a picture of a typical teen angel on location in Rock and Roll Encino, California. You can see he's smoking a cigarette, wearing his leather jacket. And the history here is they're talking about these teen angels didn't exist between the 19 or before the 1950s. But in the 1950s, that's when they came into existence. And they had switchblade massacres and uh, beach drownings and a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So we're looking for something that originated back in the 1950s. And the one thing that really comes to mind, if you guys like film, you probably have all heard of the film Rebel Without a Cause. This starred James Dean. This was his big break movie. In the movie, he's just a young kid, and he starts having problems with people at his school here in LA. And he gets into a switchblade fight. He ends up doing a drag race off of the side of a cliff, right by Palo Verde or something like that. And the guy that he races against didn't get out of his car in time, and he falls over the cliff and he dies. So a lot of the things here are what kids and teens idolized that day. They thought James Dean was cool as hell. And one of the places in Rebel Without a Cause, one of the main locations that they filmed the movie was at Griffith Observatory out here in the northern part of LA. And one of the funny things about Griffith Observatory, if you've actually been there, is that the closer you zoom in, there's actually a bust of James Dean here. So you could see that because he filmed this movie here, he was honored. He eventually died not long after in a racing accident. He loved racing, but you could see they have a James Dean statue here to honor the rebel without a cause here. So what I believe is that this is what they're talking about. Teen angels have already been spotted. If you know about the Griffith Observatory, you know they have a couple of very powerful telescopes there, and they're able to view a lot of things. They're able to spot things out in space. So this is the point that we're going to bookmark, and we're going to move to the next clue. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is Gin Rummy. That sounds like the game Gin Rummy, but underneath it talks about Alcoholics Anonymous. AA, Alcohol Anonymous. If you got a problem drinking, you probably know about this. It talks about Richard the Lionheart returning from his crusade. That's kind of the only reference to a person we have. Richard the Lionheart, very famous king, and unfortunately he died early before he had an heir. The term jinn originates from Arabic and is a creature in early pre-Islamic Arabia. So this is pretty old. Arabia was an area that we talked about earlier, but this clue is pretty straightforward. You see a bum on the street, and if you know anything about LA, you know we got a lot of homeless people, but originally Skid Row. Enough said. That's the answer. Next. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the filthy hobbit. And underneath it says fumitus sordidus squalor, which roughly translates to filthy, dirty squalor. And there's not a lot of things that we can connect with here. We've all heard of the Hobbit from the Lord of the Rings. This is not the same. This guy kind of looks like a fat guy, and it really talks about smoking a lot. Indigenous American creatures knew this as tobacco, which they smoked a lot of. Oh, and then it also says dragon, the tragic Puff, Puff the magic dragon. But here we're talking about smoking. Um, this is kind of something that you have to think more about. You know, there's a lot of cigarette companies out here, but if you're looking for something that constantly smokes and you're thinking about not just a cigarette type of deal or tobacco or whatever, um, you can think of some form of transportation that used to do a lot of smoking, and that would be a train. Now, if you're from LA, you know that the most famous place is going to be the LA Union Station. This is where a lot of movies have been filmed. This is the main hub for trains. But if you think about it, you know, there's only a few trains coming in and out. These are passenger trains. If you really know LA though, and you're driving along the five, you know that there's one spot that's much bigger and has to do with trains than Union Station. And here we'll put the map into color, and you can see that this is where all the shipping and containers go right here, this area. Just south of the 5 freeway by the 710, this is where all the shipping goes. And they have these monstrously long trains, probably like 150 different cars that get pulled. If you've ever driven on the 15 to Vegas, you've probably seen these long trains. So this area right here is what we're looking at. And it just so happens that it's on Washington Boulevard, but this is where the main train station is for all the products being transported from the port of Long Beach all the way across country. This is where all the trains are, and these things are constantly smoking. So this is where we want to bookmark, and we're going to move to the next clue now. The next fair person that we're going to be looking at is the evil necromancers. This was probably one of the more harder ones to solve. First off, the translation of infidelitates minimissime means the smallest of infidelities. And it talks about Valentinis, Vampirillis, and just seems like people trying to have fun, doing their thing, maybe having affairs or whatnot. They're just out partying, having a good time. They talk about specifically the boring 20s. You know, before the Prohibition, you know, these guys used to get plastered, or maybe it was during Prohibition they used to get plastered. But then they talk about something sheiks and vamps out of Hollywood. So they give you a specific location here, and then they talk about the 40s a little more. But it was very difficult to find this answer right here, but eventually I found something that fit very well, and that would be the Coconut Grove over at the Ambassador Hotel. The Ambassador Hotel is no longer there, but some of the things that it was known for was um, Rudolph Valentino. He had a film called The Sheik. So we're talking about Sheiks and Valentini. Well, we have Valentino, but they actually took the paper mache coconut palm trees salvaged from the movie set, and they put those all inside. So these are paper maches. These aren't real coconut groves, but this is where all the elite came to play. It opened in 1921, and you had some real heavyweights out here from John Barrymore, W.C. Fields, Florence Ziegfeld Jr. This guy was, he had a movie called The Great Ziegfeld. Won Best Picture, I believe, in 1936. If you want to watch it, take a look. But you had a lot of guys and girls very famous: Joan Crawford, Gloria Swanson, Charlie Chaplin, Jesse Lasky, Louis B. Mayer. All these guys were frequent visitors here. You had singers like Bing Crosby, and this was the place to be back in the 1920s. The sad part about this hotel where the Coconut Grove used to be was at this site was the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He was killed by a guy named Saran, and he was just shot and killed there. So, unfortunately, this hotel, the Ambassador, you could see what it used to look like, very swanky, pulled in a lot of people. This hotel is gone now, and it's been torn down. And if we were to look on a map right here on Wilshire and Mariposa, what is there now is a school, the Robert F. Kennedy School, named after the senator who was assassinated there. And you also have the Archdiocese of Los Angeles close by, and the Crosby, named after Bing Crosby, most likely. So this is what's there now, but back in the 1920s, this location was where the Ambassador Hotel was. This is going to be the point that we bookmark. So we'll bookmark it and move on. Now, thankfully, this is the last clue that we're going to be using for Los Angeles, and this clue is the left wing simp and the right wing trog. The line underneath it, Pax Populi Sinister Dexterque, roughly translates to disease of people, left and right. So, this is going to be a clue that's very interesting. If you remember, some of the clues previously in the other puzzles were double entendres, meaning they had multiple meanings. This here is another clue about a double entendre. Certain people that they mention, aside from the Mayflower and Plymouth once again, they talk about John Adams and Thomas Paine, and a lot of things that have to do with politics here. Obviously, this is in the political section, but here they're just talking about a lot of events that happened. Some of these events are simple, but the most important part that's going to help us determine what this is actually on the next page, which we can't access here, but let me read it to you. On the next page, it says, periodicals, they emerge to view the issues, but return to their hole immediately if they see even the shadow of doubt. At election time, they emerge and lend candidates not just the courage to confront the issues, but the stamina to recite them endlessly. Look for signs of them wherever slogans such as, "Who needs a slogan when you can have a promise?" are heard. So it's talking about a lot of events, and the main word that really stood out was periodicals. You know what periodicals are? Those are newspapers. And if you're in LA, the most famous newspaper that we have down here is obviously the Los Angeles Times, and the building is located right here in downtown LA. So if they're giving candidates the courage to talk about the issues, they're obviously writing it in print. So they are printed in the newspaper and then distributed everywhere else. So the LA Times building, that's our last clue. We're going to bookmark it, and that's going to conclude LA. Let's talk about what we can do on the map now. So now that we have all 19 points plotted on our map, let's see what we can find, or if there's anything to find here, by doing a little connecting the dots. So what I'm going to do first is pull this picture up in Paint. And now I'm just going to play Connect the Dots. And through the magic of television, we've played a little Connect the Dots. Unfortunately, it doesn't look as round as I would like, but if you look close, you could see a 1, and you can see what appears to be something like a 3. And if we pull up another map that has a 3 in it, we can see it looks kind of similar, not 100%, but you can see it goes around and down, out, down, up, and in. So this is our 13 here in Los Angeles. Glad to have found something in the Los Angeles area. What we'll be doing next is we'll be doing puzzle number 14. 14 is in New York, so if you guys want to jump ahead and try and do some of those puzzles, great. If not, the video will be up not too long after this one. So thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.